So, hello, welcome to my second time at the Edinburgh Fringe. Um, so, as I said, this is a series, 3 stories. We'll certainly get the first 2 in before the hour's up. Might, if you're okay for the overrun, we'll have time for the third. Hello, is that Serena? I haven't got my glasses on, so I'm having to squint a little bit. So the first story is the birth of Isis and Osiris. Oh, we've got them all coming now. Yeah, I'll hang on just a slightly longer. Excellent. Okay, feel free to sling your camera on, stay muted, but just in case you've got any noises in the background. But we will make a start. Oh, more. Keep leaving it for a bit longer and I'll have loads more. The sun god Ra, creator of all that he sees, strolled through his garden of his palace on earth. It was the microcosm of the world that he created, and it was his sanctuary from what is found to be a daily grind upon this planet. Filled with flowers of all kinds, he's at least able to find some peace. He knows he needs to return to the palace court to hear the petitions from this annoying creation of his called humans. They seem so needy, always coming to him with their problems, and they expect him to help. With a sigh, he returns to the palace and sits upon the throne, waiting for the next petitioner for the afternoon. The court filled with a myriad of tribes waiting for their turn to talk to Ra, milling around. There's a disturbance at the end of the hallway, the entrance, and eyes turn. It is Ra's son, Thoth, the god of wisdom. He's very agitated and hurries forward to stand before his father. He gives his gracious bow and salutations to the Pharaoh. Father, I bring a prophecy. I have foreseen this. It will come true. Pharaoh Ra grips the throne and bids Thoth to begin. Ra wasn't aware of any other prophecies. He hadn't seen any himself, but his son, Thoth, was insightful. Thoth stands upon the dais next to his father and addresses the court. Silence. I foresee the birth of the heir to the throne after Ra. Now that was news to Ra. We hadn't thought about who was going to succeed him eventually. And it would be his decision, not a prophecy. He let it go. Thoth continued. The throne shall go to the first son of the goddess Nut and her husband Geb. Everybody surprised. Surely Ra had other heirs he could produce, but no. Ra was quite evidently upset over this. This was not his plan. His face of thunder, he stood upon the throne, and said, I shall decree who shall sit upon my throne after me, and I forbid you, Neb, my daughter, from having a child on any day or night of the year. That will end the throne, and I shall decree who it shall be. There was a gasp. That was quite something for him to lay down. And as the Ra stormed from the throne room, the silence was disturbed by a quiet sob. Eyes turned, although none, as soon as they saw who it was, could continue their gaze, for it was Nut, crying, curled in a ball on the floor, her husband Geb, arms around her, consoling her. Such an evil thing for Ra to do. Thoth, being the ever insightful, knew this prophecy could not be withheld by Ra, even for such a great, powerful being such as him. The prophecy has to unfold. And he admitted to himself this was a cruel, unjust thing to inflict upon Nut. And approaching the pair, he promised them he will assist and do all within his power to break this curse, this decree that Ra has given. As Thoth was leaving, he pondered, and he pondered over quite a few days, actually, of how he could actually break the magic of Ra, the creator of everything. Surely his power was beyond even that of Thoth. But a idea came to him. The words that Ra used could be used against him. And he had an idea. There was one deity who possibly had the power. He may not know it, but he had the power to break this. It was Kum, the god of the moon and of the night. He was also an avid gambler. He loved to play senet and would challenge anybody to play. Thoth knew he possibly had an advantage over him and challenged him to a game. The game was going both ways. It was nail-biting. One would lose one would lose another. But each time, Khonshu, sorry. Khonshu, that's embarrassing, kept upping the bets, up of the wager. And this was playing into Thoth's hands, although he had a bird's wings, but he had hands. This was exactly what Thoth wanted, because he was going to not quite trick Khonshu. Finally, this final game was getting very tight. And Thoth said, perhaps we could up the wager further. What if you were to give me a little bit of your moonlight? Khonshu agreed. and the game progressed. And each time Thoth was in the lead, Thoth would ask for a little bit more moonlight. Finally, Thoth had all he needed for his plan, and with one trick managed to defeat Khonsu and win this wager. Thoth had won enough light for 5 days. With his magic, Thoth created these 5 extra days that were not in any year, and used that to defeat Ra's magic. Nut, therefore, was able to give birth on these 5 days 5 children. On the first day, Osiris, her first son, was born. There was fanfare. This was the heir to the throne of Ra. On the second day, Horus the Elder was born. The third day, her son Set was born. And on the fourth, a daughter, her first daughter, Isis, followed by the fifth of Nephthys on the 5th day. When all 5 were born, the spirits proclaimed the children of Nut and the successor to Ra. Ra was furious. In his anger, he descended upon his children, seeking the children of Nut so that he could destroy them. But Thoth was not having this. Prophecy had to be done. He suggested to Nut perhaps he should take the first son and daughter of Nut to tutor himself in his magic, for they were to become the next king and queen of Egypt. Nut obviously was distraught at losing her first children, but she understood that should Ra find them, they would be destroyed. And so Thoth took those into his keeping in a secret place and educated them in all his magic and wisdom. When Ra found the other children, he softened, for he found Set was very charismatic, a natural leader. He actually quite liked the lad, and in a way thought, perhaps I was too eager. This child has everything a natural leader should have. Perhaps he should be the next pharaoh after me. Nut and Geb were relieved, for they weren't going to lose their children just yet. As the years went by, Isis and Osiris learnt everything from Thoth. But every day, as they grew, they asked him, when shall we sit upon the throne? When will Ra give us the throne? And Thoth, every day, in time. Soon, it didn't take long for even Isis to exceed Thoth in his magic. And ever the resourceful and desiring the throne for her brother, she had her own plans to take the throne. For if Thoth was not going to help them take it, she had to take the matter into her own hands. For her brother, husband-to-be, was taking Thoth's word. But what could she do? She needed magic from the Creator. This would be... She had magic, and of course she remembered how Thoth managed to break Ra's magic with Khonsu. So she sought Khonsu out and sweet-talked him into him teaching her his magic. It was dark, it was the nighttime magic, but it was powerful. She learned all she could from him, secretly even from Thoth. And as time went by, her power was exceeding, but still not enough to defeat Ra. She needed a plan to take the throne. And then she had a rather naughty idea. But it would work. She was certain it would work. She secretly visited the palace in disguise. No one knew who she would be, for she was in hiding. And entered the palace garden. For Ra, everybody knew, always took his walk there. Hiding in the long grass, she lay for a whole more than a day to observe his times. Then she decided to take this risk. It was a big risk, but it was worth it for the throne. While she lay on her stomach, she scraped some mud, some clay soil, spat to moisten it, and rolled it into a long, thin shape, sausage shape, and placed it on the path ahead of Ra, where he would walk next. As he approached, his eyes, wakening flowers, fell upon this clay and transformed it into a serpent. Her dark magic imbuing it with a venom that should really do the trick. It slithered off into the grass and waited for Ra's approach. He wasn't really paying attention. The court life was still winding him up, but he enjoyed his walk and enjoyed the scent of the flowers. Something struck his ankle. Intense pain. He had never felt such pain before and crumpled to the ground in agony. His cries shook the palace, and everybody descended into his garden at what such agonizing sounds could be coming from him. They could see the snake slithering off, and his ankle swelling and turning horrible colour. He pleaded with someone to assist. He did not know what has bitten him. He didn't create it. This was new, and it was beyond his power to remove this poison. Various gods, children of his, tried their magic, but none could relieve the pain, let alone get rid of the poison. And this was when Isis circled back around the group and surfaced from the grass to join the throng, shedding her disguise. She pushed her way through the crowd. It didn't take long for the crowd to realise someone of immense power was here, someone they had never seen before. There was something strange about this woman. And she took and stood and then knelt beside Ra. Ra, she whispered in his ear, I have the power to at least relieve you of the pain, but to fully remove this poison, I need to borrow something from you. Ra, in his delirium, wasn't entirely certain what was going on. Anything he said, as the pain racked through him again. Isis continued her whisper. I need your magic. If we combine our magic, I can relieve this pain. But to do this, I need to know your secret names. The names that no other being knows. That will provide the magic. Well, Ra was in absolute agony. He was well aware of revealing his secret name would be a bit of a problem. He was very reluctant, but he wasn't going to give in. So he agreed and said, I'll give you some of my names. He gave her one name after the other, but she knew that was not the right one. She could not feel the power. No, she said, I need to know your secret name. Finally, with the immense pain and his breathing becoming laboured, he knew he had little time to continue this charade. Promise me, Isis, if I tell you this name, you will never tell another soul. She said, agreed, and he whispered the name to her ear. That was all she now needed. She cast the magic out. Venom, Ra dieth, Ra liveth. Come from him and into the ground. Leave Ra be. The venom left him. Everybody was aghast, amazed at such power. And Isis was very secretly pleased with herself at this wonderful trick. Ra was never quite the same after that. He never fully healed. And reluctantly, he thought he needed to give up the throne. He was about to give this to Set, his preferred choice, when Osiris made his entrance and joined his sister, Isis. Thoth was also present. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Ra will step aside, and Osiris and Isis shall take the throne. And they did. Thank you. That's the first story. I do like that one. Right. Oh, you have the chat. Yeah, there's variety. Oh, thank you, Andrew. There's a variety of different variations on how she achieves it, but essentially she does trick Ra into giving her his magic, and you know, they will say Isis is a fantastic goddess, but you know that was a pretty underhanded way to achieve it, but the Egyptian deities were all quite amazing in this way. Yeah, every 4 years, extra 5 days. Well, they put it to the 5 days to change it from the 360 days they had to 365. They then just didn't notice the leap year that they keep missing off every year. Yeah, okay, yep, that would be helpful if someone's got an issue there. Right, well, past. Next one's possibly 15-20 minutes, and this is the one that everybody knows. This is the death of Osiris. The version, I think that's Audrey. I might just have to mute you. Oh, you're on twice. That's bizarre. That might help. So this story is a tricky one. It was never really fully documented by the Egyptians. It was only later then reconstructed for the Greek market because they liked their dramatic, and they added loads of stuff in. The version I'm going to do is in an even later one when the Romans got involved and added a load more stuff. So it's not perfect, but it's quite an entertaining story. The reign of Isis and Osiris brought peace and many possibilities to Egypt. Ra's reign was limited. He had no care of humans, but Osiris and Isis loved those humans, and they brought with them agriculture, law, order. The tribes were united, and the country was in peace. It was very prosperous. The only person that really didn't quite like this reign was Set. He was Ra's favourite, and the throne, to him, should be his, and not these two who came out of nowhere. But what to do? He had his followers who were devoted to him, do anything for him. And many months they spent planning of how could we get it. They stirred up trouble in the north to encourage Osiris to leave the capital and lead the military against these aggressors. But Isis would not leave the throne, so they couldn't claim it, and she was a formidable opponent. More had to think, what can we do more to get rid of Osiris off the throne? Each time they approached, Isis would run them back into the desert. Finally, they had to just hide for quite some time. And this time gave Set some amazing ideas. Let us throw a banquet in honour of Osiris. His followers were perplexed about this. Why invite your foe as an honoured guest? But no, do not worry, my friends, he says. We shall have our victory. On Osiris's return from the next set of wars, Set invited Osiris, just Osiris. Isis didn't need to come, but to be an honoured guest, and let's settle our divisions. Osiris suspected nothing. A big banquet was given. Much drink and food. Osiris was not aware of the dark looks he was receiving as he enjoyed himself. With all the praise of everybody around him, of how well he is such a fantastic ruler, military leader, the praise was being heaped on him. He was oblivious. And as the night wore on, Set decided to spring his plan. He quieted the room down. I have a present for one person in this room. And he ushered in a huge chest. Whoever can lie down in this chest without scrunching up or having too much room with the head and feet can take this beautiful chest home. And it was beautiful, made of cedar, exquisite carving, gilded. It was a prize, absolutely amazing prize. And each person within the banquet tried, and all was either too long or too short. And said, "Brother, why don't you try?" Osiris, all exuberant from the excitement of the day, climbed in. The trap is the spring. He was a perfect fit. And before Osiris could attempt to leave, Set slammed the lid down, and his followers jumped at the chest, locking it, sealing it. Osiris could not escape. And hurriedly, they lifted this chest and took it to the river Nile and threw it in. It didn't sink, it floated down the river. They were a little bit anxious about how it would, if it would get stuck, but they followed to make sure it entered through the delta and out to sea. That, they hoped, was the end of the matter. With no Osiris, Set led his companions to the palace and revealed to Isis what they had done, and that he now sat upon the throne. Set decided to take his sister Nephthys as his queen. She was reluctant, but it was her duty. And Osiris and Isis, in her distraught tears and screaming, left the palace in search for her husband. Set sat upon the throne, and his plan was complete. Egypt still prospered, but there was more hardship. Isis travelled far, searching for any sign of where this chest could have been washed up. She then found rumour, after some years, of a curious tree. One of the neighbouring countries, the ruler had announced that an unusual tree had been found on the edge of the coast. A cedar tree that grew at such an enormous height. It's so fragrant, totally unlike any other cedar tree that they have ever seen in the country. And the ruler decided to have it cut down and taken to the palace to be a huge symbol of his power, and that everyone could marvel at it. Isis suspected something strange about this and followed up this lead. Assuming another identity, she crept within the palace, and she could sense there was something about that tree familiar. She could feel it. One night, with everybody asleep, she entered the palace court and split that pillar of cedar apart, and within there was the body of her husband. The noise drew attention, and the marvel at such a thing. And when they saw the true identity of Isis, they cowered for fear of her, what she would do against them. But that was not her concern. She needed to protect her husband. So she took his body back to Egypt in the hope that she could resurrect him. Hiding in the marshes, she consulted Thoth and others and her other mentor of Khonsu. Remember that time? On how she could revive her husband. But Set had heard of this revelation and discovery of Osiris and put all his effort into locating the body to prevent Isis from completing her plan. He did not want Osiris back. Now he was all comfy on the throne. He eventually found where Osiris was. Isis confided in her sister Nephthys, and Nephthys told Set reluctantly. And Set took no time in obtaining the body and destroying it. He cut it up into several pieces, 14 pieces, and spread each piece of the body across Egypt. The phallus ended up in the river and was eaten by a fish. But the heart, the head, the arms, the legs spread across Egypt. He was adamant there was no way Isis would be able to revive him now. But he had underestimated the power and the resourcefulness of Isis. A merely cut up body was not going to stop her. And she began a new search for all the body parts. It took many years. She finally found them, apart from the phallus, for that was truly eaten by a fish. But how could she revive him without his complete body? Again, from what she remembered when she defeated Ra, she took some mud and created a phallus and attached it to the body. Then with her magic that she had found and was told by Thoth and Khonsu, she revived him by copulating. And at that moment, as he revived, she became pregnant. Osiris, not fully revived. He had been dead for a long time, and he yearned to be left as one of the dead. Tearfully, Isis accepted this and put all her effort into protecting her child, especially from the no doubtful anger and jealousy that Set would find should he ever find out that there is another heir to the throne before him. And she hid. And what happens next is in the next story. Right, so we are coming up to 45 minutes. Now, we could very well overrun the hour. If you've got to run, fair enough. If you want to bail out now, then fine. If you want to hang around for the next story, and that's fine too. Oh, yeah, thank you. Oh, Stilly. Oh, got the names. That is fine too. So, the free Fringe is completely free for the performers and for you guys. So, feel free to donate if you wish to the Fringe. I shall certainly be doing that later. Myself, I'm not massively fussed. If you want, go and see all the other fantastic shows. Stilly here's got one in a few hours, about 3.5 hours. Do you want to do a plug, Stilly? No? You can throw your link in if you don't want to talk. That's fine. No, you're not going to plug your show? No, it's really good. Actually, I'm going to go see it for the first time tonight, so... But see all the other fantastic shows. We put a lot of effort into all of this. So, the final story. This is personally one of my favourite ones. It's from the most complete part of this story is on the Metternich Stela in the Metropolitan Museum in the USA. I'll probably never see it, but it's a fantastic story. It's quite short as well. So we might go to the hour. So, as we left the last story, Isis, pregnant, hiding in the marshes. She had to keep moving because the servants of Set were constantly hounding her. She thought she needed to go to the deepest part of the marsh. And on the constant run, she had to continually recreate new identities for fear of discovery. With the pregnancy increasing, she was struggling to find places to hide and to travel. This was her last hope. Continuing into the depths of the marsh, muddy, distraught, exhausted, she staggered from what looks like good ground to other ground, often slipping into mires of water and mud. She was tired, but she needed to save her child. And herself, for Set would not let up. They would both surely die. Deeper and deeper she went into the marsh, becoming more entangled and mired in the mess. Finally, with almost total exhaustion gone, she cast a spell to summon 7 scorpions that were the minions of her sister, Salket. They were renowned throughout Egypt as being fantastic protectors of whoever requires them. So she drew upon those and claimed them for herself. But still, the 7 she cast. Tophon, Bophon before me, Mestet, Mesetatef beside me, Potet, Thotet, Maatet behind me. Put your faces to the ground. Guide me on solid ground to a safe place. They circled her and took her deep on a sure path through the marsh. Deeper and deeper. Finally, as night fell, they encountered a village. It was pretty rustic, not a huge village, but this was safe. Isis felt relieved to be here. She scanned the huts and identified what possibly could be the head woman. Approaching, the villagers scattered, for what was before them was something out of a nightmare. A woman caked with mud, dishevelled, hair tangled, and the scorpions surrounding her. This was something you did not want to be anywhere near. All fearfully they all hid, but Isis kept on and knocked on the door of this hut. It creaked open. "I am Usut," a woman says behind the door. "I am the head woman here. Go away. I do not want you here. Your evil-looking appearance and these foul creatures. Go, be gone. You have no sanctuary here." Isis was a little put out. She was in no mood to argue. She just needed a bed of any kind and food and drink. She begged to Usut to allow her in, but Usut would not let such a strange and evil-looking creature in and slammed the door in her face. Isis, almost at the point of collapse, looked tearfully around the rest of the village. Then a young woman approached, in rags, took Isis's hand. "I have no fear for you. Come with me. My name is Taha. I have very little within my house. I only have rushes that you can have, and I will sleep on the stone and on the dirt. I have very little food, but it is yours, for you look like you need some rest." Isis gratefully accepted this invitation, and to Taha's word, the hut was very poor. It stank, dark, damp from the marsh, lots of rotten food, and the straw was barely straw. It was almost rotten down. But at this point, Isis just needed somewhere safe, and just collapsed and was sound asleep straight away. Now, these 7 scorpions Taha would not really let into the house. She was nervous, but Isis accepted that and bade the scorpions to remain outside. The scorpions had an idea. They were well aware of the slight and against Isis that this woman Assert had against their mistress. This was not going to go unanswered. How dare a human deny a goddess assistance? They were going to teach her a lesson. All 7 crowded together, and with magic they placed all their venom onto Tofun and bid Tofun to go into this house. Tofun crawled underneath the door of this hut of Assert and looked around the house in the darkness. It found a child, and it stung the child. The child screamed, waking everybody, and as Tofun left the hut, anything that was combustible in that house burnt. Soon the house was on fire, and Assert, grabbing her wailing child, evacuated from the house into the middle of the square, bringing everybody else out. The scorpions hid into the rushes. She screamed and screamed that something had crept into her house and injured her child. He is near death. What happened to her? Why is her house burning? The villagers were lost for words. The noise had actually roused Isis, and she sensed the magic of the scorpions at work. She approached the sick child and said, "I can heal your child." Assert was very surprised. "Why would you heal my child for me giving you such a bad welcome? If you heal him, I will have all my possessions that I have left will be yours." Isis brushed that away. "No, I will heal him, for I am with child myself, and I take pity upon this child. For if it happened to mine, I would want the same done." People were confused at this, but then they weren't very confused much longer, for Isis shed her disguise to reveal her true identity, and everybody in the village fell to their knees. Assert was speechless, completely astounded and apologetic beyond words. She fell to her knees and begged and cried forgiveness, brushing away the hospitality she could have given to a goddess. Isis healed the child, and Asut was grateful. Isis obviously refused all of her goods, for she needed to continue her journey, which she did after a good night's sleep with Tahar. Thank you. And we are almost on the hour. This is better than overnight running last night. Woohoo! So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed those stories. I've got more shows every 4 p.m. next Saturday and Sunday to the end of the month. Those are all original stories based on the negative confession and the instructions in Im and Hopet. So it's a little bit interesting, but it's also a bit of, if you're familiar with Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected, it's a bit of that, but set in ancient Egypt. So I'm quite thrilled for that, because not many people have heard that. So welcome for coming along. I hope you've had a great time. If you want to give any feedback or anything, wow, I'm an amateur one. I've been